Welcome to Nostalgia Pilots, a mobile fighter G Gundam podcast that sold its soul to the Devil Gundam. I'm Hugh.
I'm Jurd.
I'm Jason.
And I'm Spence.
And we're here to discuss G Gundam episode 20, George, Beat the Nightmare. In an episode that really should be entitled, George, Go to Therapy.
Absolutely.
You need to talk to someone. You've got PTSD.
Yeah, that has become the running theme of these recent episodes, is that everyone's got PTSD.
And I think it's really interesting that they're showing the different ways that these people are going through similar types of PTSD. And the only one who is relatively well adjusted to it was, what's Neo Russia's person's name?
Argo.
And
Monk.
that's probably because Argo has been through some shit.
Well,
Argo was a space pirate, so, the things he's gone through are probably worse than that.
and also, he's an adult. The rest of these guys are, in their 18, 19 years old, except for Saisashi.
I don't know. I think
that's
George
also
is older than that. But
I think they're all squarely shonen aged except for Gulski.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
he's definitely the grandpa of the group.
well, no, that can't be right because Rain has a college degree and she and Domon are about the same age. So she's at least in her
Well, she
20s.
doesn't just have a
think that
college
Rain
degree,
is
right?
actually
She's-
probably
She's
more
an MD. She's an MD.
Okay, she's practicing medicine. We don't know that she has a license to practice medicine.
We have had in episodes talk of when she was at university, and unless she is some child prodigy,
the butler does actually
I
say
hate to
in
break
this.
this to you. We're gonna split the difference. Rain is 20.
Okay.
Okay.
how old is George?
Domon is
14.
20, also 20.
Okay. Good.
George is 20. Seeing a theme.
Chibity, I would say Chibity maybe a little older. 21, 22 maybe?
Chibity Crockett is also 20. So
Wow.
they just went down the line.
Hold on,
Argo
Argo's
is the grandpa of the group at a arthritic 26.
Oh my God,
Which
26.
means
Yeah,
he was
right.
a pirate captain at 25.
What the? Okay.
Or at
Well, okay,
21, I should say.
With that in mind, what have the rest of them been doing? At 26, he was a notorious space pirate.
At 21, he was a notorious space pirate because that whole thing where he ran into the space station happened 5 years ago, which actually kind of makes a lot of sense if, he accidentally hit the space station because he didn't actually know how to drive.
It seems like the apocalypse has a lot of upward mobility in its career paths. Wow, these guys really have no problem getting sweet jobs.
Yeah,
They're.
Grunt work.
I mean, if you think about it as the equivalent Robot Olympics, it makes sense that they're all about that age.
I was
They've
actually
just
just thinking the same thing. So yeah, because most of our Olympians are in their teens or early 20s.
yeah, because
Speaking of impractical and useless sports, Gundam fencing.
Gundam fencing!
So, all right, Spence, you mentioned this in our group chat.
Yep.
But holy fuck, how is this robot piloted? How does this work?
Okay.
Is
Is it description time? Is it description time? Can I give a description?
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Because I'm going to require you to give a description about something else later on.
Okay, so you have George in the impeccable Rose Gundam fighting with his foil, and then you have this other Gundam that, if C-3PO was made into a more butler-like shape, so with a coat and with a metal bow tie
and a mustache.
and a mustache and very, very boxy brown colors, no chrome whatsoever. So you have
No real pretty
C-3PO, Butler C-3PO fencing, and the poor butler, Raymond, is driving this thing with a steering wheel. And then afterwards you see that there are also levers and things like that he can use to adjust things. But a steering wheel. Everybody else has the body condom and does everything. The Gundams do everything that the Gundam fighter does. How does this thing function with a steering wheel?
But also, it's not just a steering wheel. It's like a steering wheel out of a 1960s Mustang because it's got it's got like the chrome with the holes in it, and it also has a clutch. Like he doesn't shift this thing like it was levers. Like, oh, I need to put it in overdrive. No. It hits like a clutch. You even hear it like grinding gears, and I'm like, how in the world does this function? How
okay, hear me out.
Oh my God, you sound like me.
What we need here is a Nicolas Cage film in which he has to steal a number of these old school Gundams.
Gone in 60 Seconds Mech Edition.
And then at the end, he's just got, I can't even remember the dumb name he gives the car at the end of that film, but he's obsessed with just Raymond's Gundam.
Oh my God.
Okay, speaking of which, who wants to give a bet or guess the name of this robot?
I still stand by the Buttle Gundam. Because that's what butlers do. They buttle.
I can't think of a joke to tie in Weird Al Yankovic's "Dare to Be Stupid" song that was played during the Junkticon scene from Transformers. So I'll have to defer to you guys.
I have to assume this Gundam was built as a last throw publicity effort by the Ask Jeeves engine. So I assume it is Jeeves. You can ask him
liked it. If it's not, that is the new official name for this Gundam.
Spence is the closest. It is the NEL-75C Butler mobile robot. Just called the Butler.
No, we're calling it Jeeves. We're calling it Jeeves from now on.
We could call it the Buttle Jeeves Gundam.
Oh, okay, hold on. We've actually gotten ahead of ourselves, though, because I did want to touch on the opening. Before we get to George's PTSD after this fight,
yes,
we do get the Les Mis French barricades being run.
Yes, because France apparently shut the Bastille into space. Like the Bastille is heavy. That you know how you
but it's a sense of
ruined the Earth again just getting it up there.
I don't understand the scale though, because it's like we fired all of Texas. Oh, but we also just fired. Like anyway.
Listen, okay. And maybe also, I do want to note that we do get a wide shot of Neo France's space colony, and it is perfect because it is just a bouquet of roses.
As one does.
As you do.
Now, I will say this. Maybe they're not showing us all of Earth, and wherever there's a major continent or Gundam pilot that has a country to represent, there's just this massive crater because they built these underground space rockets to launch these countries into space. Like the Earth is pockmarked with just continent and country-sized shaped holes just around the world.
My theory at this point is actually a little bit more like the later Douglas Adams stuff. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the section of the Hitchhiker's Guide books where they fire all the mostly useless people into space. But I increasingly believe that these space colonies are the long con, and it's essentially the poor people talking Elon Musk into firing himself towards the sun. And that the planet is perfectly fine. We have achieved, we have certainly established by now that there is nothing wrong with planet Earth. It looks like it's a paradise that hasn't seen better days since 200 years ago. So,
you know what, Jurd? I think you might be right. Because you got to think, if the poor people conned all the rich, egotistical dudes into launching themselves into space into some rich guy space race, all the corporations would go with them and Earth would probably be a better place.
Okay, so we got to loop it back though. So 20-year-old medical doctor Rain MD gets approached by the butler after George has a freak out about, essentially it's PTSD's flashbacks mixed with the Devil Gundam flashbacks.
So can we, I would have thought Rain was like a sports medicine doctor almost because of the relationship she had with her college boyfriend. But now I'm like, maybe she's a counselor. Maybe she's a mechanic / psychiatrist because let's be honest. Most of these people come to her when their Gundam fighters display PTSD, depression, anxiety, and a whole lot of other mental issues, none of which should be being addressed by a pure mechanic.
So I'm pretty sure she has a master's degree in engineering, in technical engineering, and a and her MD. So she is a doctor for physical medicine, and then she was minoring in psychology. It's not one that she uses often, or she trained for often, but she's getting a heck of a lot of use out of her Psych 101.
Yeah, every night she's like, "Can I just please do open heart surgery tomorrow? Like, I would much prefer some
a broken bone or something."
Yeah, just if I have to listen to another Gundam fighter talk about his fighting erectile dysfunction, I don't know what's going to happen.
Well, you've got to remember that medical science is pretty complicated at this point, and you have to generalize like that because most of the problems you have can actually just simply be solved by a wrench at this point. So there's really not a lot of use for a general surgeon or doctor.
Yeah, that is true.
Well,
it's cannot fix
it's
mental.
two things. Wrenches solve physical problems, and all emotional problems can be solved by having a good fight.
That is true. Like, or trying to have someone kill you as an apology.
And on that note, actually, they do attempt to get Doman together to fight with George to fix his PTSD, because that's what you need to solve violence with more violence. It's a Scooby-Doo sort of solution. If he's got amnesia, just bonk him on the head again. It'll be perfectly okay.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh God!
Go ahead. And that's the point where George
Raymond?
is like, "No,
Oh, okay.
what are you doing?"
I was trying to help because you sounded stuck. Are you talking to your cat?
Like George was like, "What are you doing? How dare you?"
Oh yeah, that's right. Because George got upset because Raymond decided to approach Rain again. These guys are supposed to be sponsored athletes from these different countries. I know the Dallas Cowboys have medical teams, have medical like people on their team, like they staff them. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you're telling me that Neo France doesn't have, I don't know, any form of doctor? Only Neo Japan has one by proxy of their mechanic?
I'm half wondering. So I'm thinking back to a couple of episodes ago when the group was first released from the DG cells, and they were saying goodbye to Rain, and George took an extra second, looked like he was going to say something. So I'm wondering if that's what he was going to say, like, "Hey, I've been having these reoccurring nightmares. I can't sleep. We've been recovering for a few days." But he got cut off by Domon being dumb. So I like just thinking back to that. I'm wondering if that's what he was going to address with Rain before they left wherever it was they were.
I mean,
okay, speaking of those nightmares, though, I actually need somebody to explain to me, because I got totally sidetracked on a different train of thought.
Sure.
What was going on with the Miss Marie / Maria Louise? Like, what happened there? I looked down and she was exploding or something. I missed it.
Go ahead.
He had a nightmare waking sequence where she gets kidnapped by the Devil Gundam, and then that becomes the explosions because that gets into his PSD.
But is this an actual thing that happened, or is this just him having a freak out about something that might happen?
Just him having a freak out.
It's him having a freak out combined with him having PTSD about this incident that happened in the final.
Which is why I definitely think that her and George were probably dating. And when he became a knight, he took his job as a knight so seriously that he backed out of the relationship. Because like you said, Spence, he said he cannot give his love to her because he's a knight. And I think this is also tying into his trauma, that he realizes that maybe he made a mistake by backing out of this relationship.
Hopefully not, because going back to their ages, Maria Louise is 13.
Yeah, it did seem like he was, aware of that fact in that first iteration. Like, I don't remember what it was, the first couple episodes when they first met, and he's like, she was into him, and he was like, no, I'm your knight, I'm not your sugar daddy or whatever.
Yeah.
That's very much like a young teacher tried to like dissuade a kid that is very like hi.
It also
but also has the ability to like have him executed.
George's behavior, though, in this episode, in the way he gets angry and whatever, is so interesting in that's what they underline, because he's so knightly and calm generally, that I felt like that actually carried forward really well. I don't know that Saisaichi's previous episode I was as so much into it.
Well, because Saisaichi has a different realm of experience, and so where he is still a child, he has a lot of fear for his own self, whereas George is grown up enough that he has people that he cares for, that he is afraid to lose. Because of the way he is, the way his personality is, he's not as scared of self-sacrifice as he is about people that he cares about or innocent people losing their lives senselessly. And I think that goes very well into the flashback that Raymond provides to Domon and Rain in the next scene. You see what I did there? I had a segue.
Very nice.
So Raymond's like, I'm going to get in so much trouble for showing you this, but here. And so they pull it up, and it's the fight that determined who was going to be Neo France's champion and Gundam fighter. And the opponent, whose name I can't recall, and I really should.
His name is Mirabeau.
Thank you. Mirabeau is so uncompromising with his will to win that he uses tricks that go against George's chivalry, such as standing right in front of the spectators so that George can't use rose bits, because if he uses rose bits, it's going to hurt the spectators. And so the king is like, well, your despicable actions make you not good for this position. So the winner is George. The Mirabeau, whatever his name is, gets mad and goes to shoot somebody. And in trying to defend, I think he was shooting at the king. George's explosion accidentally set the whole arena on fire and killed everybody.
Yeah, there was like a like Mirabeau has like rocket arms.
Yeah.
And like it set one of those off.
You would think that George would have some trauma from that before his encounter with the Devil Gundam. Because that's a lot of innocent people you murdered. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not his fault. And he is a knight, so it's his job to protect the king and the royal family. So, he did exactly what he was supposed to do. But you also lit a lot of people on fire.
Well, I think that's part of why Raymond's showing this, right? And then he puts the question, or actually, I think it's Rain who's like, what do you want me to do? And then I love this line. He says, just bring back his soul. Oh, yeah, simple, easy peasy. Glad I got this psych degree to bring back souls.
But yeah, so anyway, having gone through different traumas throughout my life, some of those traumas get boxed away and compartmentalized, and it takes a different trauma to trigger it. That whole saying, the straw that broke the camel's back. So it could be that George was just taking it and compartmentalized it, but because of the way that the DG cells got into his system and got into his head, it unlocked that part of himself that's horrified and disgusted with himself for what he did, even though it wasn't his fault.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Spider-Man conundrum, right? And I know this is topical because I just saw No Way Home.
No Way Home, yeah.
Excellent movie.
No spoilers.
No spoilers.
No spoilers. But with all the iteration of Spider-Man that we see, they lose someone significant to themselves, and they always put that on themselves, even though it's not their fault, right? You know what I'm saying? there's no way Tobey Maguire Spider-Man could know that, or that guy was going to run out there and shoot Uncle Ben, right? Like he did. There's no way he could know that, right? But in this case, there's no way George could have known that this would have triggered an explosion to decimate an entire stadium or whatever. And there's no way he could have known that he would be infected by some weird nanotechnology from some supernatural or preternatural robot that would turn him into a living zombie of rage and aggression, right? Like these are things out of his, purview. But he still holds himself responsible because he holds himself to a higher standard. And I will give George that. Amongst all of the Gundam pilots we've seen thus far, he and Argo are the only ones who generally hold themselves to a realistic and high enough standard as adults. Domon is almost as childish as a Saisashi, but doesn't have the reasoning of being a child to be that way.
What one might argue, though, almost too high standards, though, right? Because he immediately fires his most beloved and loyal servant when it turns out that guy's trying to get him some help.
Now, yes.
Instead of, drinking himself to sleep in his tent in front of his at his table.
That is true.
He did both of those things. But looking at it from George's perspective, even in a rational mind, what Raymond did was a severe breach of confidentiality.
It was a betrayal.
It was a huge betrayal. So yeah, obviously he would be fired.
Now, mind you, it is a betrayal because of the greater good of it all, right? Like,
well, okay. Here's my counter argument. I do think that in a normal world, you are correct that it would be a betrayal and a violation of confidence. But as Rain later in the episode or maybe it was even before that, starts yammering, through the lens of the universe, these guys are all super good friends now. Because she's like, oh, it'd be great to have such good friends as you, or whatever, as they're talking about the different guys and their different motivations. And so I think we're supposed to assume that it's more like Raymond went to one of his besties and was like, hey, he needs some assistance, like he's kind of losing it a little bit. Not just like, I'm trying to think of the equivalent, going to the other sports team or going to the other WWF wrestler or whatever and being like, hey, he's having a psychological breakdown.
You're actually probably not too far off from because of the way the show tries to take it, right? Like, since they became members of the Shuffle Alliance and the original Shuffle Alliance sacrificed themselves, the show has been playing it like these guys just instantly became a well-oiled machine of a team with friends or amongst friends. And that's not the case. Like, up until they became members of the Shuffle Alliance, they were all trying to fight each other. Like, they all wanted to be the top dog.
Yeah.
And just by this coincidence that they became members of the Shuffle Alliance, they are now forced to be friends. And the show wants to play it both ways, right? Like, it wants them to, like, seem like this well-oiled machine. Because, again, every time we see one of these other Gundam pilots struggling, by the end of it, their crest is glowing and they're fighting alongside Domon or something of that nature. When in reality, this is kind of like 5 different star athletes from 5 different teams being pulled off and put onto a whole new team and supposed to be a super team. Like this was LeBron James going to take his talents to South Beach.
So that's like, what Team USA basketball team is.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's the All-Stars.
Yeah. And in this case, Raymond basically assumes that. He's like, he's not listening to me anymore, which I think is very rude of George, by the way. Like, when Raymond was like trying to fence with him and kind of give him some advice like he's always done because he is his butler, he's like, you can't treat me like a child anymore. And I really wanted Raymond to be like, no, I'm not supposed to treat you like a child anymore, so you have to stop acting like one and go get help. But
that's what okay. We need Alfred. We need Michael Caine's Alfred.
Yes.
Yeah. Now here's an opportunity for me to act like a child for a moment, because while they're all having this conversation, I'm gonna need you guys to check the chat here. While they're having this conversation, of course, the German ninja in his odd I don't know, Club Gear is across the way, watching them. And I may have mentioned this before, but I really just want to take a second to focus in on the stupidity of his hat. Because the single jester ear, or is it like the long toque? I don't understand what's going on here. And they really highlighted it in this episode. Like, they went all in on the Dingle-Dangle. And I just need to understand, what is German about this?
Listen,
It is a stocking cap, and stocking caps are a traditional German wear for different holidays. So yes, it is German. Thank you for asking the fashion guru who also did historical, not cosplay, but historical garb with the SCA. You're welcome.
But is this not something like, perhaps it's just my Canadian experience, but you're talking like midwinter, right? Like, you're not standing there in the jungles going, oh, I need my stocking cap. I need my toque on. My ears are chill.
now,
So much doesn't need to wear his cloak a million days in a row, and when Saisaichi is in the cold, he needs a freaking jacket. As we have discussed in all of these freaking shows, and I'm saying freaking because I'm trying to cut down on my cursing, getting ready for the holidays, and seeing my nephews I don't want to
I know where this is
say
going.
fuck in front of them. Anyway, fashion has no sense in these goddamn shows. We saw Fringe in space that doesn't move.
Yeah, okay. So that's fair. Before we move away from the screenshot, I'm again 100% about these random shots where, for some reason, the Gundam is a lurking voyeur, just like peeking in beyond the cliff. How do they manage to keep finding spots where it's like, well, it's just the right height for his bust, like just right height for the shoulders and head? Anyhow.
I'm surprised, Jurd, you didn't mention the freeze frame fencing at the very beginning, where they had to save on the budget. So it was just a whole lot of moving background with two still robots and a lot of sound effects.
Yeah,
And yet the 20-foot tall rapier was still like springy when it hit the earth.
this better be Chekhov's rapier. We better see these rapiers come back later on, or I'm just going to be mad.
As soon as you asked about this, it's basically a German mullet because it's all business in the front, party in the back with this thing.
Well, because they're also trying to integrate it with your standard ninja mask, and that's just, come on. Because because of the flag coloring, the actual stocking cap portion, the toque portion, is just that middle strip, and it looks... Anyway.
Listen, as soon as you asked it, and Spence was going to speak, I was like, oh, it's coming. We're going to be talking... We're talking about tassels.
Actually, let's dig in on these tassels, because apparently the rest of Guyana is just the Old West. Like, once Raymond leaves the camp, he's off in the old saloon, and their honky-tonk piano's going. And
Thank you for bringing that up.
He finds the bar right at the end.
Guyana. Where the hell is this saloon? They are in the middle of the goddamn rainforests.
Listen. At this point, all I can say is that everyone on Earth, as soon as they lost the billionaires, were like, we're low-keying it up, guys. We're going back. We're going to get spider wing doors. We're going to...
Yeah, it wasn't even like a busted-up saloon. It was like a nice place. I have a note here. I'm like, it seems really nice.
Yeah, it's a place where you could probably throw the peanut shells on the ground and everything. There's like sawdust and stuff. I'm pretty sure it's great.
There are towns in the Guyana Highlands. Like,
Yeah.
he could have driven to Boa Vista.
I like the idea that this is actually like a themed bar. Like, it's a Western theme. It's totally like, it'd be like going to, Montana's or something, or like an Outback steakhouse. Like, this is just their local, franchise.
He just, he drove into Brazil and is hitting a bar for coffee.
Yeah, fair. So Doman and Rain do come around, and they intend on challenging George as a sort of a way of, as mentioned, knocking him out of his PTSD by giving him more violent trauma to his brain. And then Mirabeau shows up.
Yeah, well, first there's a news report on the bar that, he has escaped, and we do see his on-point, villain face makeup game, which I am very proud of. That is some A+ villain eyeliner.
Listen. You can't just be a villain and not be fabulous, all right? I mean, after Zex, and after Trace, and after Lady Un, and Dorothy, you have to be spectacular. You have to bring your A game for villainy.
Next convention, I'm totally cosplaying Mirabeau.
You don't.
Yes.
Listen, you don't qualify for rose-scented baths if you do not bring your A game. You just don't. And I feel like that's the Gundam barrier to entry for villainy. If you do not come with your A game, you just do not qualify for villainous baths. You also don't get guns that forgot how to kill.
Well, okay. So I absolutely agree about the face paint and the general aesthetic, but I did want to talk about the triple spiked crotch. I felt like that was probably unnecessary.
No, totally necessary. He has to let all the ladies know it's off limits. He has no time for it.
Are you saying that's a chastity cage on a Gundam?
Yup.
All right. That's fine. Again, it's not the weirdest. I'm looking at you, Mad Max Fury Road. It's not the weirdest.
I mean, think about it. He's gay for George.
Oh, okay. You are not wrong, because in the fight, when he and George are going at it, and George gets him down towards the end of the fight, the score turns into this melodic, sweet serenade almost. Mm-hmm. And George is looking longingly at this dude as he's defeating him. And I was like, were they lovers before this?
Bet you they were.
What is going on here? Because the score is so strange in these last two segments with the fight and the end of it. I was like, where did this come from? Because usually it's the trumpet led crazy Domon's transforming, this hand of mine is burning red, but instead it's this. It's almost like George is sad that he's got to defeat his long lost love, and even Raymond looks at it he's like, I'm so proud of you, Master George. And I'm like, did he know this? Did he know what was going on between the two of them? And he hit it because he's the butler?
Obviously, they were already broken up because, Mirabeau is so unchivalrous that they could not be together. I think Jean-Pierre was only really using him to learn his weaknesses so that he could use them in the fight against him in his weird spiky Gundam.
Well, you see, I got to admit, I missed all of that. I just focused on the weird Ninja Scroll beehive missile situation on his back.
Yes,
because
I do think that's cool. But also, I did like the fact that, Jean-Pierre Mirabeau did get 1,000 years in jail for his real crime of kicking Miette.
Why do you make me think of the terrible ninjas from Ninja Scroll? Because they're all terrible. They're the worst ninjas. And it doesn't get better in Basilisk either. They're all just reject ninjas from Ninja Scroll. But you're right. I didn't know kicking someone was 1,000 years in jail. Is that over sentencing? I think it's over sentencing, right?
So I have one question from this fight in the present day. So Domon sees George at one point really starting to freak out and falter, and Domon is enough of this and gets in the Shining Gundam. Have we seen Schwartzbruder's net abilities before today? Or before this?
Yes, I believe it came up when he was fighting the Death Army soldiers that were dressed up like the Master Gundam.
The pink eye soldiers.
Yeah, the fake ones.
Yeah. Okay. Because I didn't recall that, and so that was interesting to me.
I mean, let's be real. If they decided to have him whip out kunais and ninja stars and start hucking those things around, I would not be surprised, because he seems to have the most stereotypical kind of ninja tactics when he needs to elicit Big Brother wisdom, right? Like,
Yes.
he can only do ninja things when he has to be the older brother. Other than that, he's just trolling you like a profileless user on the internet. like, I mean, that's really all he does. Like, he just stands around, talks trash, and then when he has to, he'll do a Ninja-esque thing, and then he goes back to talking trash. He's literally the Big Brother. Like, he couldn't be more of a Big Brother if he looked at Domon and said, "Beat that, you little trout sniffer." Like,
Like, as if his name wasn't Dark Brother in German.
It's Black Brother in German.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I should say that that's phonetically, because I don't know how they spelled Bruder.
So let's talk about the culmination, because we've discussed a lot in this last, well, actually a couple episodes about PTSD and sort of the results of, or the effects of that on these guys. So George, they get locked in battle, and he kind of has a freak out, and Doman shows up, and he almost shining fingers, but then George does it on his own and, sort of overcomes as he does. But it turns out that he can essentially heal the DG cells without having to negatively affect the person infected by them. So essentially he can save people, right?
Yeah, I think you're right that he has become the cleric of the party. I don't remember who actually said it, but one of us said it, and it wasn't me. And like, I think everybody's reaction to how he's doing that is absolutely justified, because this is magic he's doing. This is not anything technical. Like, he's just like, I'm praying over this DG cell thing. Let me bring him back.
Yeah, he used hand tattoo magic.
I mean, let's be real. He used lay on hands, and he is a knight. He may not be the cleric per se, but he's definitely a paladin.
Yeah, paladin.
Paladin.
Yeah. Okay, but is not the implication here, and let's, correct me if I'm wrong, but at this point, Doman has shining fingered his way through, 100 living people that he, I guess, didn't actually need to kill because they could have been cured by George.
But you know what? It's because George was too much of a chump to realize that all he needed was a good fight to get through his PTSD. It took him too long to realize it. So Domon says, no, screw it. I got to murder all these people with my shining, blazing fingers. Like my hands.
Yeah, you say that, but at the end of the show, essentially, Doman is looking at his sword, and they're talking about how he has to find another way, or it's sort of implied that he has to use Shining Finger perhaps in a non-violent or destructive way. And again, the show, through all of its iterations, keeps coming back to this idea of non-violence or, there being a better path. But in the end of the day, we still just get guys blowing up all the time.
Yeah, and having to punch things in the face.
Yeah.
It's, it's, to be fair, with G Gundam, the anti-militaristic themes and child soldier stuff is wrong, is kind of lost in G Gundam. We see it a lot with the original Mobile Suit Gundam and the stuff that follows that, like Zeta Gundam and Double Zeta, as well as Stardust Memory, 8th MS Team, Gundam Seed. And Iron Blood Orphans takes that even further. But G Gundam, it likes to try to talk about those things, but in the end, it's still like, hey, we got model kits to sell, and they love seeing things explode.
Yeah. G Gundam is very much the most Saturday morning cartoon of Gundams.
They do enough to get by to be called the Gundam series, because we do have a masked individual, and then we even get another masked individual. So we have two masked individuals, and we get technically younger people fighting in a war, but it's not a war, it's a tournament, technically.
Yes. So it's a sport
that potentially murdered a lot of people before they realized they could just lay on hands and heal people. But no, when people ask me what G Gundam is, I say it's the Dragon Ball Z of Gundam shows.
Yeah, and this whole period of people having to fight other people to get past their personal problems just feels like the training montage section.
Oh, absolutely. Although you guys are right also that if we decided to do a Gone in 60 Seconds mashup for a Nicolas Cage movie, I would watch that in a heartbeat. Like, I need him in a mech. I don't know how we're going to get him in the next Pacific Rim movie, but we need to. Even if it's just the villain. Like, just Nicolas Cage losing his mind in a robot. I need it.
Oh, okay. Hear me out. He's fighting in the Wicker Man.
Oh my god.
Yes.
Okay.
And the
Anyway,
Wicker Man
does that
can be on fire in space?
As is traditional on the show, once we invoke the Wicker Man, does that mean we've come to our favorite moments, or?
Yes, it has.
Yes.
My favorite moment, we didn't talk about it a lot, but it was because I mentioned it earlier, but these fighters express their PTSD as fighting erectile dysfunction and Domon just not being able to cut things properly with his sword.
Okay, you know what? I didn't actually make this comment because I was like, this is a little bit lowbrow, but Super Mode is seriously the boner he can't control. Like, he's in class, and it's popping up, and he's like, I don't even know why. I wasn't excited. Nothing was going on. It just popped up.
Although, to be fair, he was hugging a man when it showed up in this one, so...
Anyway, sorry. I was going to avoid it, but...
He was holding George in an embrace where they were having a very intimate moment. So, again, there's a lot of things about Domon, man. A lot of things.
Okay, well, my favorite moment was something we didn't touch on too much, but there was some nice visual language in this episode between this series, maybe more than any of the other ones we've watched so far, does a nice job of that melding of the pilot in the suit and the pilot outside the suit. And so there were some scenes that were pretty standard when they're like punching Mirabeau in the face and he's kind of like taking it in the suit but looking like he's getting punched. But then there was actually, I thought at least, a nice little beat in which Domon puts his hand on George's shoulder, and it's his Gundam suit on the shoulder of the Gundam suit, but then it's reflected in the interface inside, and it's almost like George reflecting on that and what it means. Anyway, it was just a little thing, but visually it carried well, I thought.
It was a great moment. I also recognized that moment as like, oh, that might be how that feels from one suit to another. Interesting.
There's a lot of shows like this, like with that whole type of interface with the body condom, takes a lot of reference from Evangelion, and a lot of the original Gona Guy super robot shows. Because if you think about it, it just ties in with that whole burning passion and me and my robot can do anything as long as we believe and have the energy. I mean, if you look back at Getter Robo and Super Robo, and you look at Mazen Kaiser Skull and Gurren Lagann from recent years, a lot of that interface is the emotional and psychic link between the machine and the pilot. So when they have those interactions where they, touch one another or have that moment, you get that, right? And so it's kind of like an homage to that heyday of super robot shows until we got Gurren Lagann, of course, and then they started throwing galaxies at each other. But yeah, they took a lot of influence. I mean, and even with Evangelion, right? As much as we see the mentality of those pilots affect how they pilot the robot, it also shows if they can complete the mission or if they have superpowers or if the robot is super strong. And just, again, Shinji's dad is one of the worst dads in all of anime, but it affected the mentality of his pilot. So it's that connection there. And it's pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I think this is the only Gundam that does it, but it's not bad.
I did like the way that we saw the visual of Mirabeau get taken over by the DG cells, where it just forms like a missile wasp nest on his back. And then the wasps are very Macrossy in the way they just kind of Etano circus all over the place, and they're very chaotic and uncontrolled. I thought it was a very good visual language and also well animated.
That's another anime throwback, the Etano circus.
Something we didn't mention is that sequence in which Raymond actually catches two of the missiles.
Yes.
Which was, yeah.
Butler Robot, especially Butler Robot, hearing that there is a fight going on from this weird cantina somewhere in New Little Guyana, and then booking it across the jungle in the Butler Gundam.
Can we get a transformation sequence for the Butler? Can we get that? Like
Sailor Moon transformation sequence. It's gonna be like he sticks his arm up and goes Butler Gundam, and then you have the Sailor Moon music with like the violins and very melodic and bubbles everywhere.
Listen,
and then rose bits all around him because of who he serves.
Yeah, like I would love for a magical boy transformation. If you guys haven't seen Star Driver with the Ginga Bishonen, which is like a magical boy mech show, I need that for this Butler. I need him to call out for this Buttle Jeeves Gundam and have some weird transformation sequence. I just need it. Like I feel like it would be apropos given what this show has, especially since he doesn't get a body condom.
I kind of went the other way mentally. I felt like this guy would have felt right at home in a futuristic Tintin take. Like if he was assisting Tintin in his giant robot and Tintin was having misadventures. Anyway, there's something about the design that really fit into that school of animation, I thought.
Well, yeah, because it mixes future and nostalgic past in its design.
Yeah, and that's what we're all here for, guys, right? Nostalgia. Like that's what we're here for, right?
And what are we here for next?
Be the title of our podcast.
Maybe.
Indeed.
Even. You never know.
So what are we here for next week?
I'm excited for next week, though, because we see Rain in the body condom again. And I'm excited.
Yes. And
I
that
watched
is
the trailer.
Mobile Fighter G Gundam, episode 21, 3 days to the time limit.
Take it to the limit.
Until next week, you can find all of our show notes over at nostalgiapilots.com. Find everything I do by going to my link tree. That's Hugh J. O'Donnell, or that's that's linktr.ee/Hugh J. O'Donnell.
You can find everything I do over at Skinner.fm.
You can find everything I do at nerdswithvoices.com.
And since that's a great idea, you can find everything I do also on Linktree at linktr.ee/resonant moon.
Until next week, will not even the morning sunlight wash away this nightmare?
No, but a bunch of wine might.
And a good fight.